In this video, we're going to talk about what Frege thought of the reference of sentences is. So let's take two sentences. Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn and Samuel Clemens wrote Huckleberry Finn. Now, here's a question. What do these sentences refer to? Well, they're esoteric sentences, declarative sentences. They say something about the world. They assert something. And Frege says such sentences contain propositions. What are propositions? Well, Frege actually says thoughts. I mentioned in class why I'm distinguishing between the two. The reason is pretty simple. Frege thinks of thoughts as inhabitants of the third realm, as kind of combinations of senses. And that's closer to what people might call a proposition than it is to what we typically call a thought. When you and I use the word thought, we typically are thinking of something in someone's head. Frege was very clear that he didn't think of thoughts that way. So I'll just use the word proposition to avoid that kind of confusion. Okay, so here's a question. Do sentences refer to propositions? And Frege is going to say no. He's going to say they express propositions. The proposition is kind of how they manage to refer to what they refer to. So you can think of it like this. The name Mark Twain doesn't refer to the sense of Mark Twain. It doesn't refer to the description you associate with the name. It refers to the guy in the world. But how it manages to refer to the guy in the world is by sort of going through the sense to get you to the guy. Similarly, Frege is going to say that sentences refer to something in the world, and how they manage to do that is by going through propositions to get to that referent. But let's see why Frege says sentences can't refer to propositions. Since the name Mark Twain and the name Samuel Clemens have the same reference, these two sentences must have the same reference. And the idea here is that this sentence S1 and this sentence S2 differ only in that this one has Mark Twain and this one has Samuel Clemens. So the word wrote and the word wrote here are the same, meaning they refer to the same thing. The word Huckleberry Finn and Huckleberry Finn here are the same, meaning they refer to the same thing. So long as Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens refer to the same thing, S1 and S2 must refer to the same thing. And of course, Mark Twain and Samuel Clemens do refer to the same thing. Therefore, S1 and S2 must refer to the same thing. It follows, says Frege, that if sentences refer to propositions, then these two sentences express the same proposition. But they don't express the same proposition. After all, somebody could rationally say, I know Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn, but I deny that Samuel Clemens wrote Huckleberry Finn. Again, to use the same example, the person who lives next door to Samuel Clemens and hates him and doesn't realize that he's Mark Twain and loves Mark Twain might say, yes, Huckleberry Finn is by Mark Twain, but vehemently deny that his horrible neighbor Samuel Clemens wrote Huckleberry Finn. It follows that if sentences refer to propositions, then S1 and S2 express the same proposition. And since one could rationally accept S1 but reject S2, S1 and S2 express different propositions, then S1 and S2 don't refer to propositions, right? These two sentences express the same proposition, but they express the same proposition if sentences refer to propositions, but they don't express the same proposition. So by modus tollens, the sentences don't refer to propositions. At least these ones don't. Clearly, we're sometimes so what do they refer to? Maybe they have only senses. So Frege says maybe sentences don't refer at all. He's going to deny that, but he's considering that possibility. So why does he deny that? Well, he says clearly sometimes when we're interested in whether a sentence is true, clearly sometimes we're interested in knowing whether a sentence is true. And knowing the sense of a sentence doesn't tell us about its truth. So he thinks clearly there's something more to what we're interested in when we consider sentences. Again, the idea is that senses, knowing the sense of a sentence, knowing what proposition it expresses, doesn't tell you whether it's true or false. And sometimes when we're interested in a sentence, we want to know whether it's true or false. So our interest in sentences goes beyond our interest in their senses. Now, here's a question. Do sentences refer to truth values? And Frege is going to say yes. So he says we're concerned with reference because we're concerned with whether or not sentences are true. It follows not by a deductive argument, by a sort of broadly abductive argument that sentence reference and truth value are naturally connected, which suggests that sentences refer to truth values. What does it mean to say sentences refer to truth values? Well, Frege says, look, I want to think of sentences as proper names that refer to individuals. So what are the individuals? Well, there's the individual true and there's the individual false. So S1 and S2 refer to the individual true. The sentence, Stephen Biggs wrote Huckleberry Finn, refers to the individual false. Now, what are these individuals? It seems weird to treat these as individuals. It seems like we're introducing something new into our ontology, which is our view of what exists in order to account for reference, but we're not. The true is just everything that exists, and the false is just anything that doesn't exist. So these sentences refer to the true because there's a portion of the actually existing world in which comprises Mark Twain having written Huckleberry Finn / Samuel Clemens having written Huckleberry Finn. When you say Stephen Biggs wrote Huckleberry Finn, that's false because there isn't a portion of the world that comprises Stephen Biggs having written Huckleberry Finn. Now, if you entertain S1, you make no claim about to which individual it refers. But if you judge S1 to be true, then you're claiming that that sentence refers to the true. And if you judge S1 to be false, then you're claiming that that sentence refers to the false. Now, here's an objection. It's better to think of true and false as predicates, which denote properties, rather than thinking of them as that to which you refer. So you'd say that S1 has the property being true, not that it refers to the object of the true. So this view is wrong, says the objection. And Frege replies as follows. He says, the proposition Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn is true. Take that sentence. In that sentence, is true acts as a predicate that designates a property being true, which applies to the subject, which is the proposition expressed by S1. Well, now Frege offers the following argument. Every relation of subject to predicate is itself a proposition. So, Stephen Biggs is happy is a relation of subject Stephen Biggs to predicate is happy, and that expresses the proposition Stephen Biggs is happy. So if true, the word true, is a predicate that applies to a subject, then this thing up here expresses a proposition. So the proposition Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn is true, that whole thing would express a proposition. But, says Frege, truth isn't a part of propositions, right? If this thing expresses a proposition, then truth is a part of propositions. But truth isn't a part of propositions, he says, any more than the sun is. Truth is about what the world actually is. It's not about, how we think about things. It's about the nature of the world. Just like the sun is part of the world. It's not part of my mind. Okay. So he says true is not a predicate that applies to propositions, but rather it's what's referred to by sentences / propositions. Okay. Now, his view here is going to require elaboration, and I'll give you the initial sort of take here, and then we'll do some elaboration, consider objections in the next video. So here's the view. For any ordinary declarative sentence, that sentence is a name that refers to either true or false. And for any such sentence, whether it refers to true or false is determined by the references of the constituent expressions and how those references relate to one another. This is called compositionality. So the basic idea here is in the sentence Mark Twain wrote Huckleberry Finn, whether that refers to true or false is determined by the referent of Mark Twain, the referent of wrote, and the referent of Huckleberry Finn. So each of those refers to something, and what it refers to, plus the sort of syntax, gives you the truth condition for the sentence. And then combine that with the world, and you're going to know whether you're going to have a fixed truth value, true or false, for that sentence. Okay. So for example, S1 refers to true, which implies that the relation wrote refers to the relation that the word wrote refers to holds between the individuals that the words Mark Twain and the words Huckleberry Finn refer to. Now, as I said, there's an objection, and this leads to a reply, which leads Frege to adjust this view a little bit, and we'll consider that in a subsequent video.